I'll tell you something. In the years since then, I have had negative, stupid judgments made about me by white people. Some of them took bread out of my mouth, Some of them made me less well known. And it never really hurt me because I really have a sense that most white people are not competent to judge me because they don't know where I've come from. They have no sense of it. They don't know what glories are in my achievements or in the achievements of most black people I know. So, I may get mad for a little while if a white person does me wrong. But by and large, I think, well, that's what you get for living among people who are kind of diminished, culturally disadvantaged,
Hello, and welcome to another day in paradise. Those were the powerfully articulate words from civil rights leader and Assistant Attorney General of the United States of America, the late, great Professor Roger Wilkins. Now, I must admit, when I first heard that interview, which was done some 30 years ago, I was just taken aback by his demeanor, by his words. It was cutting and damning of the social justice that was happening in America. Words can be powerful, but I would say you have the ability to empower those words and to take that power away from those words. The words that we use to describe ourselves and the origins of those words are extremely important. Now, if I need to be honest, I can understand why some people started to use the term black to describe people of African origin. Africa is by far the most ethnically and culturally and racially diverse continent on this planet by far. No other continent even comes close. You also have the slave trade, which greatly influenced the terminology used because it was much easier just to arbitrarily name every single person on an entire continent one short word instead of grouping everybody into the multitude of many races, sub-races and ethnicities. So using the term black to describe people from Africa became widespread, even amongst so-called black people. Now, a couple of years ago, I decided to buck the trend and I began to change the words that I use to name the people of our continent. So, despite what you may think now, there are many different races in the African continent. And I'm not just talking about the non-natives like the Arabs to the north or the Europeans to the south. I'm talking about the other races that exist, like the Kushites and the Nilotes and the Pygmies and the Bantus. All completely different races. They even look different. Now, I find this really, really interesting, so I will be making a complete video on the many races of our continent and why it is important that we call people by their specific race. I started using the term foundational Americans of African ancestry to describe what you would call an African American. Now, you've probably seen my other videos and you've probably seen me struggle to use the term foundational Americans of African history because, let's be honest, it's a bit of a mouthful. But I do believe it's worth it. It's important to differentiate those foundational American of African ancestry with those Africans that have moved to the United States in later years. It's also important because when I say the word American, he's an American, what comes to your mind? Normally, people think of a white person. And this is not an accident. We've been engineered to believe that Americans are white when they are anything but. I call Americans of European ancestry Euro-Americans. I use the term American for a person who you would call a Native American. because the reality is that Americans, well, Native Americans, well, they're not Native Americans. They are just Americans, aren't they? They are just native to America. It should go without saying, really, if you're saying that that person is native. I don't call somebody a native African, do I? If they're African, they're African. We are African. With the history of black foundational Americans of African ancestry, with everything that happened to them, everything that they had been through and have continued to go through even to this day. I mean, they still believe in this American dream. They still continue to believe in the Constitution. They still believe, I think, a little bit naively in the justice, in the American justice system. Who believes in that? I think other countries people around the world are looking at the American justice system, and it's the laughing stock of the world, isn't it? I mean, it's just ridiculous. Americans of African ancestry have been loyal to the United States of America. Just think about it. Think about everything they've been through. They've been systematically disenfranchised right from the very beginning. There has never been a point in time in which the American people have never been disenfranchised by the white European population. What are they afraid of? Why are they purposely doing that for? Huh? What are they afraid of? Anyway, in fact, weirdly enough, and besides what I was just saying, I truly believe that the most loyal people in the United States have always been the foundational Americans of African ancestry. They have remained loyal through everything. And, I truly believe that foundational Americans of African ancestry believe wholly in the goodness and the decency of European Americans. I think that they believe more deeply in the European Americans. They believe more in the decency of European Americans than the European Americans themselves. Especially in the South, you can remember, I truly believe that Americans of European descent knew they were horrible people because they were doing a lot of horrible things. Even if they didn't see black people as being human, you wouldn't treat and do something like that to another person or subject of any kind. So I truly believe they knew what they were. In fact, I think the most loyal people in the United States have always been the foundational Americans of African ancestry. They believed wholly in European Americans. They believed in the decency of European Americans. And they also believed that someday the European Americans would wake up and they would smell the coffee and realize that they've been hoodwinked by the rest of society and would begin to change their behavior towards the foundational Americans of African ancestry. You mean Africans were enslaved by America, by the European Americans? And I still think that foundational Americans of African ancestry believed more in the decency of European Americans more than the European Americans themselves. I don't know why they did it. Perhaps it was because they really were isolated and they were fighting this battle by themselves. The civil rights was all them. Yeah, they had some powerful backers. They had the Rothschilds and they had the Bilderberg group who were all on their side. These guys were all bankers, so they just wanted equality, of course, perhaps not for the right reason. The more equal the other people are, the more pay they get, really. The more taxes they pay, the more money goes into the coffers of the banks. So I think that was part of it as well. I don't think they were just trying to be nice people. Now, the systems now, even the systems back then that was used to subjugate and disenfranchise and keep Africans fighting amongst each other are still alive and in operation today, albeit in a clandestine manner. This is why it's important that we do not use the terms and words used by those who want to continue that subjugation. Okay, so there we have it. Words can be powerful, but you must empower those words. And remember, knowledge is power. So make sure you use this knowledge wisely. Okay, thanks for listening anyway, and thanks for making it through with me. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and click the bell notification. And I'm going to enjoy the rest of this weather. Have a good one. Ta-ra a bit.